Shanks, Mihawk, Roger. All three characters are some of the most powerful in all of One Piece, and they all have one really interesting thing in common. No devil fruits. Now, of course, they have unbelievable hockey and sword skills, but that's not the point of this video, because I want to take these already insanely overpowered characters and make them absolutely untouchable by finding the absolutely perfect devil fruit for all the strongest non-devil fruit users in all of One Piece. And we're going to kick this off with possibly the strongest character ever, and yes, I'm of course talking about the one and only former Pirate King Goldie Roger, who mostly overwhelmed his enemies with his god tier level hockey, supreme swordsmanship, and possibly the strongest and greatest crew to ever sail the seas. And yet, one thing that Roger never had, as far as we know at least, is an absolutely broken devil fruit ability. And I'll be honest, when thinking about this perfect devil fruit for Roger, the very first fruit that came to mind was his son's devil fruit, the Flame fruit. And that's because Ace's Logia power is just so OP because it allows you to literally shoot out flames, create giant waves of fire, and especially for a swordsman like Roger, you can coat your entire sword in flames as well to cut down enemies with devastatingly powerful fiery slashes. However, then when thinking about it a little bit more, there is one devil fruit that would meet Roger's need even better than the Flame fruit, and that is of course the legendary Nika devil fruit that was eaten by our main character Luffy. And funnily enough, for the longest time before we ever got the reveal about the true nature of the rubber fruit, many fans thought that Roger might have actually eaten this devil fruit. However, since we now know that awakening this fruit basically allows you to become the legendary figure Joy Boy, well, then we just have to give this one to Roger. And in case you're wondering, that's of course because when Roger and his crew finally reached the last island Love Tale, for some unknown reason, they were too early there to use whatever they found. Now, that could simply have been a time thing, like they didn't show up at the right moment, or it might have just been because they needed Joy Boy to awaken in order to actually use the secret treasure left behind by the ancient kingdom. In fact, we have some hint about this when Shanks decided to finally go after the One Piece himself after he learned that Luffy had awakened his fruit, so giving Roger the Nika devil fruit might be the only one to really make sense because it means that he could have actually used whatever he found on Love Tale if he was Joy Boy himself. Plus, on top of that, we all know that Roger's personality is insanely similar to Luffy, so I'm very sure that he would have eventually awakened this fruit as well and made full use of its broken abilities. But now that Roger has his devil fruit, we of course also need one for his right-hand man here, Rayleigh. And the so-called Dark King fights in basically the exact same way as his captain, but I have a very different devil fruit in mind for Luffy's mentor. And that's because Rayleigh here has basically almost unmatched speed and power in his prime, but we could take these already busted stats and turn them all the way up to maximum by giving him the Light Devil Fruit, which would allow him to move at light speed, swing his sword with even more devastating power, and of course, shoot off light bullets to take out enemies from a distance. And fittingly enough, Rayleigh has been linked to this particular fruit ever since he actually clashed with Admiral Kizaru during the Sabaody Archipelago arc. And so even though that this fruit would be perfect for the Dark King, I'm actually thinking that another fruit might be even better for Rayleigh during his prime years. That's because we know that he already was such a top tier fighter, but one thing that he couldn't ever do is help his captain stay alive once Roger got his deadly disease. And so what if we gave Rayleigh the Phoenix fruit because of its special healing abilities? And in case you forgot, this fruit is a mythical zone fruit that turns the user into this majestic blue phoenix that can fly around like a regular bird, but the unbelievable special ability of this fruit is to use the magical blue flames here to heal yourself and, most importantly, other people as well. And so what if by having this ability, Rayleigh could not only fight a lot stronger, but have actually cured his captain, or if not that, then maybe at least extend his lifespan by giving him a regular supply of healing flames. Plus, let's be real, I just think that the idea of a flying swordsman design is just incredibly awesome, as we saw with King, so I'm giving this fruit to Rayleigh, but as hard as it is to believe, Roger and Rayleigh are not even the strongest members of their own crew in this video. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's because we're going to give the perfect devil fruit to Shanks as well in just a few minutes. But before we get to the absolute insanity that I have in mind for the red-haired emperor, we first need to talk about the man who used to hunt down the Roger pirates himself, Monkey D. Garp. And unlike Roger and Rayleigh, Luffy's grandfather is just a straight-up brawler who fights with his bare knuckle fists. However, if you know anything about Luffy's old man, then you'll know that these fists are basically nuclear weapons, as he can wipe out entire cities with a single punch. Which means that we of course have to ask ourselves the hard question, what even would be the perfect devil fruit to give to a man as already powerful as this? And actually, the first thing I thought was giving him the Buddha fruit, which was eaten by his old friend and former fleet admiral Sengoku, and I think it would make a lot of sense. That's because eating this fruit allows Garp to transform into an enormous golden Buddha with giant fists and the ability to send out huge shockwaves. But then, after giving it a little bit more thought, I'm actually a little bit concerned that this fruit particularly would slow Garp down. Plus, that giant body might make Garp extra hungry, so our next contender here is the biscuit fruit, which would allow him to make an endless supply of delicious biscuits. Because as we know, one of Garp's favorite foods in the world is rice crackers, which I think he'd be able to make with this devil fruit as well. And while this would certainly satisfy his hunger cravings and be a kind of quirky fruit to give Garp, I still think it's not quite the most impressive fruit for him. So let's give him the classic Luffy treatment, where we take his punches and, you know, just make them bigger. And of course, we can do exactly that with the Deka Deka no Mi, which, as we see right here, allows its user to freely change their size to make them into enormous humans that are literally the size of mountains. And while we earlier mentioned that Garp being bigger was maybe a bad thing since it would make him slower, I like to think that he could keep his normal form for speed, and then when he wants to, then change his size right before punching someone to create a truly massive impact. Which, I mean, if his regular power allows him to destroy entire cities, then with this power, let's be real, he would probably be able to destroy entire islands. And if we're thinking about it though, I think Garp's apprentice Kobe might someday even surpass the legendary marine here, and to do that, he might just need the perfect devil fruit himself. And lucky for the pink-haired marine, well, we're here to help with just that. And let me warn you, these options are just going to absolutely blow your mind. Let's kick it off by considering the ice devil fruit, you know, casually, which in case you forgot was eaten by the former marine admiral Aokiji. And ever since Aokiji left the marines, there has always been a chance that he could die, which means that Kobe could in fact theoretically eat this devil fruit sometime in the future. But like most Logias, it's just absurdly powerful, with the ability to freeze anything, shoot out icy blasts, and even create ice weapons to use against opponents. But let's be real, what makes this fruit truly perfect for Kobe here is that we recently learned that Aokiji here was also a beloved student of Garp. So there is some history to go with this fruit and Kobe. But then on the other hand, if we're being honest, Kobe is much more of a close distance fist fighter, just like his mentor. So let's think of a fruit that will go with his regular fighting style. And this is gonna blow your mind, because with Kobe's expert levels of haki and destructive punches, well, he is most comfortable fighting at close range. However, against many devil fruit users who prefer to fight from further away, Kobe might be at a disadvantage in many occasions. So let's fix exactly that weakness, and let's give him the only devil fruit that can make sure you have close range combat against other devil fruit users, which coincidentally is the Darkness Logia fruit originally eaten by Blackbeard. Which I know does sound absolutely insane, but let me explain what I think here. So we all know that Blackbeard's powers allow him to shoot out darkness and trap people inside his black holes, but one of the other abilities that I think people tend to forget sometimes is that it allows him to suck in devil fruit users so that he can touch them and such erase their devil fruit abilities. And in fact, once he has hold of them, he can then beat them down. So if we gave this power to Kobe, he would always be able to fight any devil fruit user up at close range and deal massive blows like this. So yeah, this power alone would make Kobe one of the most feared fighters in the the entire world. However, funnily enough, you might already describe this next character exactly in that way, because Dracul Mihawk is the world's strongest swordsman, period. And while we've actually never seen him fight all out, which is kind of nuts that far into the story, well, we can just imagine that he has absolute top tier hockey to match his absolutely insane sword skills, since he was set to fight on par with Shanks back in their early days. Which does mean that he technically doesn't really need a devil fruit, but just like Kobe, Mihawk's fighting style could also be enhanced by the darkness fruit abilities. For example, if Mihawk ate the darkness fruit, he could use his darkness pocket dimension to store different types of swords and weapons and pull them out whenever he needs them. Or I guess he could use it the same way that we discussed with Kobe and suck people in, but since Mihawk can already send quite insane flying slashes, he doesn't really need the ability to get people close to him as Kobe does. And so if we think in a different direction, what he actually does need is this. Because, you know, come on, who wouldn't love to see a winged version of this dark swordsman flying around and chasing down his enemies? And I mean, if we're talking about a devil fruit with wings for Mihawk, then probably the best one would be the falcon fruit, which was once eaten by this Alabaster Royal Guard here. And yeah, I know it's not exactly the same as his name. I actually did the extra research to see if there was a hawk fruit to fit Mihawk's name, but the falcon fruit is the best that we could find in the actual story. And speaking of swordsmen, this next one is kind of different from every other swordsman out there, because Oden Kozuki's two-sword style was nearly strong enough to already take down the Emperor Kaido. And while admittedly his hockey levels are probably a tier below those of Roger or the other top tiers on this list, Oden is still an extremely overpowered fighter who would possibly even reach the top with the help of the perfect devil fruit. But let's be real, picking the perfect devil fruit for someone like Oden is actually really difficult. Now obviously any Logia fruit would be a real boost to anyone's overall defense and power, but based on his personality, I think a truly hilariously well-fitting option would once again be the Buddha fruit. I mean, come on, Oden just does seem like the guy who would love to walk around naked as a giant golden Buddha, but the option that best balances his powers, defense, and Oden's sword style would actually be the heat fruit. This one was originally eaten by one of Big Mom's children, and I do know that it sounds like a kind of sick joke because Oden was literally boiled to death, but with the powers of the heat fruit, well, Oden might be resistant to such high degree temperatures, meaning that his fruit would give him a great chance to survive the boiling. And on top of that, he could also send out massive heat waves, set people on fire, or even add flaming heat to his impressive two-sword style of fighting, just like this guy right here. And now with Oden's new blazing swords out of the way, we can finally talk about the one and only Straw Hat on this list. And while I've already done a full-length video on Zoro and Sanji's perfect devil fruits that you can watch after this, I also think that the Straw Hat's helmsman Jinbei is another perfect candidate for a devil fruit boost. Because let's be real, he's already an insanely powerful fighter with his mastery of Fishman Karate and his ability to manipulate water somewhat, so obviously something water or ice related would be probably perfect for him. For example, something like the Ice Devil Fruit would fit insanely well with his powers because he could move water around and then freeze it at the perfect time. Or another water related ability is the Swim Fruit, which we now know that Jinbei's clone actually already has, so of course this would also be an insanely good option for someone as good a swimmer as Jinbei. However, despite these two great options, I'm actually gonna go in the complete opposite direction here because I do think that Jinbei would be the perfect character to use the Fire Fruit. Huh? What? Let me explain here. Because with his natural water manipulation techniques plus the power of the Flame Fruit, Jinbei could be a fire and water wielding master, the likes of which the world of One Piece has literally never seen before. But if you think that Jinbei's fighting style is unique here, just wait until we discuss the perfect devil fruit for this next character, because now we have Lucky Roo, who is one of Shanks' all-time top officers. We honestly honestly haven't seen fighting all that much. Well, he obviously did use a gun back in chapter 1, and in film Red, we actually saw him bouncing around as this giant spinning ball, so to find his perfect devil fruit, it's gonna be quite tricky here. Although we do know that he's always eating basically, so maybe just giving him the cook fruit is the best choice here. I mean, that would let him turn anything and everything into food and eat it, so sounds pretty good to me. But another really good option probably is to enhance his bowling ball fighting style and just give him the Tonton fruit, formerly eaten by this guy here, which basically allows the user to dramatically increase their body weight at will, and I'm talking up to 10 million kilograms, which I mean roughly equals to about 10,000 cars. In other words, imagine Lucky Roo smashing into you with that kind of weight as a spinning ball. I mean, let's be real, you'd probably just turn into dust or something. However, this is Shanks' crew that we're talking about, and I do really feel like we need something extra special here, even for Lucky Roo. So why not give him the light Logia devil fruit, because I just literally can't help myself from smiling at the image of Lucky Roo dashing around with his weight at the speed of light. And honestly, that kind of speed plus all the other insane powers of the light fruit with his raw strength could even let Lucky Roo defeat the next character on this list. Maybe. Because while Lucky Roo is undoubtedly very powerful, Shanks' right-hand man and second in command, Beckman, has an even more impressive reputation. For one, he did frighten an admiral pre-time skip and is known to be both an expert marksman, brawler, and most importantly, he is one of the smartest characters in the entire story. And honestly, that fact alone probably means that Beckman could use nearly any devil fruit exceptionally well. And just some examples here could be the book fruit that could let him trap people in an alternate dimension, the nine-tailed fruit which would let him shapeshift into other people, which just has all kinds of uses for an intelligent person, or even say Loss Ope Ope no Mi, which is just one of the all-time most complicated fruits to learn and get good at, but also has one of the highest potentials in the entire story, period. Which, honestly, all of these would probably be amazing fits for Shanks' right-hand man, but there is one other fruit out there that truly fits Beckman the best. And ladies and gentlemen, let me direct you to the magnet fruit. Yeah, I mean, this fruit would be insane in Beckman's hands. Clearly, it is a tough fruit to use because it does require such precise control and knowledge of machines and metal, but in Beckman's hands, he could literally create anything out of metal. Railguns, an endless variety of weapons, a battleship, or if we're going really crazy here, maybe even a giant mech suit for himself. In other words, truly, this fruit and Beckman would be a match made in heaven, especially after Beckman basically already insulted its current user. But let me tell you that nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to the pure majesty of what's gonna come next. Because now we're finally gonna talk about the character that I, and probably you, have been waiting for from the start, and that is the captain of the Red Hat Pirates himself, Shanks. And honestly, I don't even want to go mess around with any of the other not as good options here, because there is only one fruit that is the absolute perfect one for Shanks in my mind, and that is this. Yeah, just imagine how cool it would be to have this enormous red hockey spewing dragon flying over a battlefield. And I mean, after fighting Kaido for most of Wano, we all pretty much know the insanely awesome powers that this dragon form truly has, with all its elemental powers like lightning, blast breath, wind slashes, and much more. But eating this fruit would also enhance Shanks' strength, speed, durability, and also recovery time. And honestly, on top of that, can you just imagine the insanity of Shanks in his dragon hybrid form wielding a sword? I mean, he'd be super buffed up with his body covered in impenetrable red scales and his massive sword. Like, man, this would would be a truly terrifying sight for any opponent. And just imagine all of this combined with Shanks' truly unmatched and godly levels of Haki would surely be enough to take down anyone, and I mean anyone in the entire One Piece world. Except Luffy, of course. And now I'm just really wondering who would actually win in a straight up fight of dragon forms, Dragon Shanks or Dragon Luffy. I mean, either way, it would be a truly earth-shattering contest, and if you want to see how Luffy would use the dragon fruit himself, plus any of the other insane Yonko devil fruits as well, you can watch that video right here. Shanks, so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. That really helps out the channel, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.